The moment you start explaining why your price is fair, you have already lost. Not because your price is wrong, not because your work has no value, because the second you begin defending the number, you accept their frame. You become the student at the board, waiting for someone poorer in vision but richer in confidence to decide if your future deserves approval. That is the first trap. Remember that. Picture it. You send the offer, the room goes quiet, a client says, "That's expensive." A boss says, "Be realistic." A friend says, "Who do you think you are?" You feel the old heat rise in your chest. Your brain starts building evidence, the hours, the sacrifice, the skills, the pain. And before you notice it, you are begging them to see value they were never trained to respect. That is the trap. So you speak, you clarify, you reduce the price with your tone before you reduce it on paper. You say, "I worked hard on this." You say, "I am not trying to be greedy." You say, "I just need stability." And in that exact second, your value leaves your hands and enters theirs. They are no longer evaluating the offer. They are evaluating your need to be chosen. That need is expensive. That is where leverage dies. Money does not reward the person with the most sincere explanation. It rewards the person who controls the frame. A number is never just a number. It is a test. The moment you defend it, you tell the other person that your internal stability depends on their reaction, and people can smell that. Markets can smell that. Employers can smell that. Predators build discounts out of it. This is how leverage leaves. Machiavelli understood something modern people pretend is immoral. Power does not begin with being right. It begins with deciding who gets to judge. If they can make you explain your ambition, they have already placed themselves above it. You are no longer negotiating as an equal. You are standing in their courtroom, asking the judge to please understand why you wanted more. That is not a negotiation. But what if you did not enter the courtroom? What if when they said, "Too expensive," you did not panic, shrink, smile, apologize, perform humility, or open your childhood file of reasons? What if you simply held the number? What if your silence made them reveal whether they had a budget problem, a respect problem, or a control problem? That is where financial power begins. This is the door. Hold it. Most people move through money like emotional children. Someone questions their price, they explain. Someone doubts their dream, they defend. Someone mocks their ambition, they soften. They are not building wealth, they are auditioning for permission. And the system loves this kind of person, because a person who needs approval can always be underpaid with politeness and delayed with hope. That is the employee's spell. This is not about arrogance. It is not about acting rich before you are rich. It is about changing the source of your reality. If your value only feels real after someone agrees with it, you do not own it yet. Today we are going to dissect the psychology of financial non-defense and why the need to justify your worth keeps you cheap, loyal, useful, and controlled by rooms that never chose you. That is why it matters. I am going to show you why your biology betrays you when money is questioned, why school trained you to wait for a grade instead of name a price, why employers reward the person who makes discomfort disappear, why clients push not because they need a discount, but because they want to know whether your number has a spine, and how to stop negotiating against yourself before the other side even speaks. But be warned. This requires you to kill a part of yourself that has been rewarded since childhood. The part that wants to be seen as reasonable, the part that apologizes for hunger, the part that says, "I am not like those greedy people." If you cannot let that part die, every room with money in it will turn you back into the child asking if your answer is correct and if your desire is allowed. That child must grow up. So why do you do it? Why, when someone challenges your price, is your first instinct to provide proof of your innocence? It starts earlier than business. As a child, the safest person was the one who could explain. I did my homework. I did not mean it. I was trying. Explanation became your way of escaping punishment. Then you grew up and carried the same reflex into every conversation about money. School deepened the wound. It taught you that value comes after permission. Raise your hand, wait your turn, do the work first. Let the authority decide if it deserves a reward. Then the job continued the programming. Work hard, be patient, do not ask too soon, be grateful. Smile while your ambition is delayed. You call it maturity, but sometimes it is just trained obedience with better clothes, and it still controls you. When you justify your price, you are unconsciously saying, "You are the authority, I am the applicant. Please approve my hunger so I can feel safe." That energy is expensive. It costs more than any discount. It tells the buyer where to press. It tells the employer how long you will wait. It tells the room that respect is optional, because understanding still matters to you more than ownership. It is a leak. There is a brutal rule in financial psychology. It is safer to be respected than understood. The person who needs to be understood must keep talking. The person who must keep talking loses leverage. A serious owner does not explain every brick in the building before naming the rent. A bank does not apologize for interest. A system never begs you to agree before it charges you. It simply holds the frame. The validating self believes one more explanation will save it. If I show them the effort, they will respect the price. If I show them the bills, they will understand the ambition. If I show them the pain, they will stop questioning the dream. Almost never. Because the objection is not always about facts. Sometimes it is a small experiment to see if you will jump, and if you jump, they know the price was soft. The first step is realizing that the financial courtroom does not exist. There is no jury deciding if you deserve to want more. There is no invisible committee approving your rate, your offer, your ambition, or your exit. There is only the price, the value, the market, and your ability to hold discomfort without leaking shame. When you stop treating people like judges, objections become information. Imagine the scenario. A client says, "That is too expensive." The old you says, "I understand, but I spent years learning this and I lowered it already, and I promise it will be worth it." Weak, predictable, discounted before the invoice. Now imagine the financial sovereign. The client says, "That is too expensive." You answer, "I understand." Then you stop talking and let the silence do the work. Do you know what happens inside that silence? It becomes a mirror. Most people are terrified of silence around money because silence removes emotional cover. The other person must now reveal the real objection. They may say the budget is smaller. They may ask what is included. They may insult the number again. Good. Now you are hearing information instead of reacting to pressure like a trained employee. Silence is not emptiness. In negotiation, silence is a room with no furniture. The manipulator throws something into it and hears the echo of their own tactic. If you rush to fill the space, you rescue them from the discomfort they created. If you hold it, they must carry their own tension. That is why a calm pause can be more expensive than a perfect explanation and sharper than a clever answer. Hold the room. Sometimes silence is not enough. Sometimes the situation needs words, but never defensive words. If you must speak, do not push back against the insult. Pull the frame toward reality. Someone says, "You care too much about money." Do not say, "No, I only want security." Say, "Yes, I care about the tool that decides who owns my time, where I live, and how much freedom I have." That is the pivot. Hold firm. What happened there? You refused to be shamed by the topic. You turned the accusation into a definition. You established that money is not a dirty obsession, but a language of power. This is financial agree and amplify. You agree with the surface, then expand it until the attacker loses the moral weapon. They wanted you guilty. Instead, you became clear, and clarity is hard to manipulate. That is the reversal. A person who is ashamed of ambition is easy to price. A person who laughs at the accusation becomes difficult to control. You are greedy. Maybe, or maybe I am done pretending poverty is proof of character. You have changed. Good. That was the point. You think you are better now. No. I think I am finally done negotiating with people who benefit when I stay small and call it humility. That is the break. Robert Greene wrote about recreating yourself, but in money this means refusing the identity others profit from. They want you to be humble when the invoice arrives, grateful when the raise is small, patient when the door is closed, loyal when ownership is impossible. If you fight every label, you remain inside their vocabulary. If you outgrow the vocabulary, the box collapses and the price becomes real. Every financial conversation has a hidden architecture. Usually there is a judge and a defendant. The judge asks, "Why should I pay that?" The defendant answers. The judge asks, "Why do you deserve more?" The defendant performs. Whoever asks the questions controls the frame. Whoever explains too soon bleeds status. The move is to refuse the defendant role and become the person examining the room. That is financial posture. They ask, "Why do you charge so much?" You answer, "Compared to what outcome?" They ask, "Can you do it cheaper?" You answer, "Which part of the result do you want removed?" They say, "Others cost less." You answer, "Then what made you keep this conversation open?" Notice the shift. You are no longer proving yourself. You are diagnosing their relationship with value, risk, and respect. That is the shift. There is another technique. Agree with the fact, not the shame. If a client says, "This is above my budget," do not collapse. Say, "Yes, it may be above the budget you set." If a boss says, "That is a big raise to ask for," say, "Yes, it is." Then stop. You accepted reality without accepting guilt. This is how grounded people remove drama from money and keep the frame clean. That is the move. Stay calm. None of this works if it is only a tactic. If your voice shakes, if your eyes beg, if your body says, "Please choose me," the words will fail. Financial power is not 20% vocabulary and 80% posture by accident. Your nervous system must believe you can survive being misunderstood. You must become able to hear no without turning it into proof that you were wrong to ask for more. That is the practice. Train it. That brings us to the shadow. Why does it hurt when someone questions your price? Because they are touching a wound that was already there. If you truly knew your work had no value, you would leave. If you truly knew it had value, you would not beg. The pain comes from the middle place, where you want more but still need permission to stop apologizing for wanting it and to stand behind your number. The financial system profits from that wound. It needs smart people who can work, sense, adapt and endure, but still feel guilty naming a number. It needs talented people who confuse modesty with morality. It needs wounded people who over-deliver to avoid rejection. The system does not need to steal your value if it can train you to discount it before the negotiation begins and call that professionalism. So here is the challenge. For the next 7 days, do not justify your financial decisions. Do not explain your price. Do not apologize for ambition. If someone questions why you want more, say, "Because I do." If someone calls it expensive, say, "It is." If someone misunderstands your hunger, let them. Sit in the fire without performing innocence. Say the number. Hold the silence. Keep the frame. New file every week.